Titan Sports Time, hosted by Mike Parsons.
Welcome to Titan Sports Time. I'm Mike Parsons, Director of Athletic Communications at Eastern Florida State College, and I'm joined by men's tennis coach Nick Rosatti. First of all, congratulations, Coach. Third place finish. Talk about finishing third in the nation.
Oh, we're super happy and excited to come back to Melbourne with some hardware. It wasn't going to look like that for a minute. We were sitting in fourth place behind Cowley College by a considerable number of points. But that was kind of the beauty of the whole tournament. It's never over till it's over, and as long as you have guys who are still in their flights, you've got a chance. So it was nice to see that our guys were pretty resilient, and even though we maybe didn't start off super hot, we finished really well.
And talk about the doubles teams, because it really was the doubles groups that got you kick-started, because the morning round didn't look great, and then all of a sudden doubles came, did their job, and really propelled us into contention.
Right. After that first day, we went 3 out of 6 in our main draw singles. So, that kind of puts you back a little bit whenever teams have won 4 or 5 or 6 out of 6 for their first round of singles. But our doubles really don't want to necessarily say carried, but at least mathematically our doubles performance is how we got third place. And having two teams make the finals points-wise, and then, of course, one winning it, right, is really why we were able to secure that podium spot.
First of all, let's just kind of talk about Pablo in the singles. I mean, number 6 seed, making that run all the way to the final. Unfortunately, falling in the final, but a great week for Pablo.
And what Pablo was able to provide and jumpstart for us was monumental, because there's also pressure on other teams when they see that teams who are near them have guys in main draws who are continuing, and in Pablo's situation, he was very dominant in his first few matches, taking out the number 1 seed from Tyler in straight sets, and then also Colin. It was a super I don't want to say easy match, but I wasn't concerned about it. I watched a few games and Pablo was in complete control. Yeah. So it was nice to see that level of confidence and dominance from Pablo in the singles. And also that efficiency in his singles, I think, really helped also for his doubles, because they were able to still continue playing. And, some other guys from other teams, I heard from other coaches, other guys withdrew or had to retire, and we were in a really good position where our guys were efficient on the court and were able to play all the matches and keep getting points for us.
And then, of course, number 2 doubles team wins a national championship. I mean, just kind of talk about Philip and Johan. They talk about it a little bit, about that connection they have, but talk about that connection in that group.
It's funny because, I told them prior to the tournament, I said, I think you guys believe this, but also I said, you guys are, in my opinion, the best number 2 doubles line, in the country. I said, you've been playing like it, kind of the momentum, just like March Madness in basketball, right? It's about who's playing their best at the end of the season. And, Johan and Phil, they played great doubles. They beat St. Leo. We played them kind of as a tune-up for the national championship. And so they have good rapport off the court. They're fun and they're silly on the court. I think they're probably, best friends first and then teammates second even. So that type of, and they said it as well, that trust that they have in each other on the court really showed through, especially in that semifinal match against Tyler, where the Tyler guys had a little bit of, one of the teammates was getting a little bit not happy with his teammate for missing some shots. But any time that Phil or Yoey had an unforced error, they came right back to each other, dapping each other up, resetting for the next point. So I think that chemistry that they had really helped propel them to win the whole thing.
And then the number 1 doubles team as well, Fernando Martinez and Salva Moulet, both guys had great tournaments, both singles and finals, or doubles, but the doubles team went all the way to the final as well.
They did, and I think kind of another thing, you have 2 guys who are close to each other, and that's kind of a little bit of strategy whenever you're making doubles teams. It's not just necessarily who is the best objectively, right, or subjectively, or maybe this guy has the best serve, so I'll put them at the top. That communication and trust in each other is really important, and Fernando and Salva have great rapport together, and they were able to make it all the way to the finals, taking out some good teams in the process. I think another really, the same thing we said about Pablo, they were very efficient, getting the straight sets wins. They actually, I don't think they were even broken their entire lead up to the finals. Yeah. super efficient tennis. That means that we were doing what we were supposed to do, serving well, high first serve percentages, and they took care of business.
And then we can't, discount the consolation finals. Those guys got huge points, and you're not in third without everybody on that team can getting a point or two here and there.
That's right. Mathematically, if we would have all those consolation matches, if we would have lost all of them, we wouldn't have gotten third. So I was super happy that even though the guys who had lost, who were out of the main draw, they didn't just give up or tank. They still kept playing, and they played to win. And so the culmination of all those points really helped us get the team title. It's not what a lot of those guys want individually. They're not going to get on Instagram and post consolation champion. That's not what they want. But that's what's kind of the beauty of this tournament. It is a team and individual championship. So even though, and I think it's great that we're mentioning them too. Even though we have individual national champions and we have national finalists, even the guys who lost earlier on, their contribution for the backdraw points are just as important.
100%. Talk about, third in the country. You're just here for the spring, and this team really did come together and finish strong. So you have a national champion in doubles and third in the country. Just talk about your first semester with the team.
Yeah, and it's, I told them, the other night when we got back, it went very quickly. The season just flashed by, and we had a lot of changes. A new dynamic when basically a stranger comes in and kind of changes their way of life. But they adapted very well. They're a very flexible group. And Philip and Salva told me, he said, hey, we were like the number 2 team in the fall or something. And I was like, well, that's great. You're not playing together this semester. This is what we're doing. And thank goodness it worked out.
Yeah.
Didn't make terrible calls, but overall they're very resilient. And when we played some of our junior college matches earlier in the year when we went to Texas, we kind of got an approximate idea of where we were at comparative to the rest of the country. And, in ranking systems, we were a consensus number 3. So it was, they described a sense of relief. I also was a little bit relieved that we finished where I thought we deserved to finish. Give a lot of credit to Tyler Junior College and Pratt Community College. Yeah. They were just a little bit better than us objectively, but I was very happy that we're beating people from those teams on certain lines, especially Pablo taking out the number 1 seed from Tyler, but then a lot of the more peer schools that we competed against, like Weatherford, Cowley, Collin, those schools where we had good close matches in the regular season. It was nice that we still took care of business at the end and didn't flip-flop or switch positions with anyone. So our guys went out and they did exactly what they were supposed to do. I really couldn't be any happier with them. Yeah,
for sure. And this tournament was a little different in a couple different ways, but one, you had Division II, so it gives longer breaks and that kind of thing into this tournament. But also, usually you'd have a couple of matches before you get into big ones where if you had the bye, you dropped right into a quarterfinal against one of the top seeds in the tournament. And so talk about that, because that is different, and we're here, we got to go right now kind of a thing as soon as you had that bye.
Right, and kind of with the way that the JUCO National Championship was set up this year is, the Division I and Division II. So, our bracket was really only 9 other teams.
Right.
So there's absolutely no margin for error. And, just like with Pablo's, for example, he's playing the number 1 seed in his first singles
match of the tournament.
And so, it helped us in a lot of ways, because then that, when you take other good teams out, it prevents them from getting those main draw points as well. And so, and really kind of too, the doubles performance, like we were talking about, the teams that we were competing with for that 3rd place, we just went further in a lot of those main draws. And so when teams are losing on that 1st or 2nd day in their route, and then you keep progressing, it was just really beneficial. At least for us. It wasn't beneficial for others, but the overall layout of the tournament, the variables just kind of went in our favor. We had a lot of intermission between singles and doubles. We had also the luxury of having Philip, for example, not in the singles, just playing the doubles, so he was always fresh and not having to worry about his singles matches. And then unfortunately for Johan, he did lose in his quarters against Cowley, but then all of his match formats in the back draw were just, a pro set. So he had less time on court. He was more fresh.
Yeah.
And so that kind of also proved to be the
difference.
difference.
And kudos to him. He came all the way back through in that one and got his points as well.
Right. So it's, everything that kind of had to happen did happen.
Yeah.
I will say, at one point there, Cowley did control their own destiny for third. And we needed some help. But that day of the semis, it all worked out.
Yeah.
We needed both of those guys to come through at 1 and 2 doubles, and they did. And then we were praying for Pratt to beat Cowley in the other semifinal at number 2, because then it was kind of, Philip and Johan would have had to have won that last doubles match in order for us to clinch third. So I think it was nice that there was no pressure,
no added pressure to him. Yeah,
there at the end. In those doubles matches, we could have lost both and still had third. But I think kind of what Johan described as well. It was just a little bit more fitting. It was more relief. And the guys asked me. They said, "Well, Coach, are you happy? Are you happy with how we did?" I was like, "Yeah, I can breathe now a little bit because I'm spending every single day, watching what the other teams are doing, seeing which teams are progressing, doing the math, doing the whole, well, okay, if we win these matches and those guys lose those matches, then we move up and they move down." So it was nice that our guys just kept fighting till the end. And, some other teams slipped up and allowed us to slide right up into third. And we were also very fortunate that those main draw matches from Cowley all, lost there at the end. And so that was really the difference. Yeah.
No, it's congratulations. It's a great way to finish third place. And now, obviously, for you, they're all sophomores. So now you get to turn and go right into recruiting now.
That's right.
Talk about that recruiting just a little bit. Obviously, you do it as soon as you got here, you start doing it. But how much easier is it when you finish as strong as we did in the national tournament?
Yeah, it's easy. Success breeds success, and so whenever you're able to show and provide that framework of, at least especially in this case, because Philip and Johan didn't win the doubles net, so now I get to say, well, look, after this one semester, how we're doing things here, and the overall development proves to be right a little bit. I think last year was fifth or sixth. And so overall, not just individually are we getting better, but that's also the whole notion there is if each person does their job individually, then the team benefits and the team gets better.
Right.
So I think that the junior college environment has that nice emphasis on, there is still individual merit where you're playing for your own national championship, but it also contributes to the team. Whereas, in Division I and Division II, that's not how their spring season works.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. Congrats once again.
Thank you so much. We'll do it again next year.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Titan Sports Time. We'll see you next time.